intention for today is to celebrate solstice, to bring us to some temples, to talk about some of the cool science about why the solstices and equinoxes are powerful, and then to give us some herbal tools and give you guys a little bit of a snapshot of what I'm going to be focusing a fair amount of my energy on this year. So let's go ahead and get started slowly. Thank you guys who are here live. So for most of us, I believe most of us here are in the Northern Hemisphere. This is winter solstice. Hi, Heidi. Nice to see you. And hi, Amy. Good to see you. For those of us who are in the Southern Hemisphere, we're in summer solstice. And so we're going to just start off with some numerology here before we get into the interesting science. And so, some of this is stuff that I pulled from the 11/11 gathering. And from what I understand, the idea of 0 and 1, and how 0 is this sort of goddess circle. And it's if we think about the yin and the yang perspective, also in alchemy, there's the immense potential for anything, and then there's the thing itself. So 0 would be the potential for anything in the world, infinite possibility. 1 would be the actual physical form, the manifestation. Quantum physics calls it the collapsing the wave function, which is the power of our consciousness. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah, okay. So then 2 is seen in numerology as more of a plural, communal manifestation. It's actually, a lot of numerologists see it as a supremely feminine force. And the idea is that it's a cooperative number, and 2's the numerology. So, 1 would be about, it's almost like an Aries energy, the I am, the driving force, power, and action. 2 in numerology is an intuitive sign, it's a cooperative sign. It's about, I would offer co-creation. So we're sitting at this day, right now today, the 12/21 portal. And so, we think about a portal as that line down the middle is kind of the energy where we're sitting, what's coming through. We have 1s and 2s. So 1 is reminding us that we are powerful creators. 2 is reminding us that this is a portal for co-creation. And then if we keep going just a little bit here, 1 + 2 = 3. And we'll get to the importance of 3 in a second. But 3 is a goddess number. It's the birth, life, death cycle. It's an alchemy, sulfur, Mercury, salt number, mind, body, soul, maiden, mother, crone. 3 is seen in numerology as a very good omen for when it comes up. So this is showing us that we are standing at this potential during this time. And I want us to think a little bit about the idea of the potential that we have and the world that we live in. We, in some level, we live in a very polarized world right now, right? But in alchemy, we talk about the polarity as being a continuum, where it's not just black and white. There's many shades of gray, but also the dark and the light, the yin and the yang, the male and the female, the mercury and the sulfur in alchemy the polarity can actually help us create something that is purely of an essence of something. And we can think about this fact that we are in a cycle and we are in a process, and the solstices and the equinoxes and the lunisolar cycles show us precisely this. So if we take a step back and think about how the calendar that we operate on in this world, the Gregorian calendar, in my understanding, it is called as much because it was put in place by Pope Gregory, the whoever number of something popes, for the purposes of taxation. Prior to that, we had this lunisolar cycle calendar where there was lunar cycles. They were about 4 weeks per cycle. There's about 13 cycles per year. The grand cycle over that is the solar cycle. And so we're talking today about the solar cycles with the solstice and the equinox. And it's interesting to note that the number 33 comes up again. It takes approximately 33 years for the precise lunisolar thumbprint to cycle back, if we think about astrology cycles, for those energetics to come back around and to cycle around. And I think it's just so cool that the number 33 is showing us that, yeah, these are powerful cycles. And if we think about what this means for us in the northern hemisphere, this is the darkest night of the year. This is the time of the darkest, the least light. And in southern hemisphere, excuse me, it's the most light. Before I get to that next picture, some of you guys have seen me talk about this. I want us to think about, maybe to understand these cycles in terms of the cycles of a day. So we have the solstices, which are the lightest and darkest. We have the equinoxes, which are the times of equal light, right? So we're in this deep, dark time. And if we think about that, time is not linear, but that's almost like the midnight experience, the depth of the night. We're at this time where it's very, very dark, but we know that the light is going to start to come. So then if we keep cycling towards dawn, dawn would be an equinox, spring equinox for us. And then if we go up to the summer solstice, that would be sometime around high noon, which is, we're in the peak of the light. There's light everywhere we look. There's so much light. And then we keep going and there's another equinox. That equinox could be something like the fall equinox, is essentially what it's called, right? So these cycles are showing us about the energetics of the world that we live in. And I wanted to take a little bit of time for us to look at another idea. You know, I talk a lot about time not being linear. The calendar that we live in, the leaning on the physical world, the leaning on linear time. Linear time is a construct. Many ancient cultures, this is an alchemical calendar. Those of you who took the Egyptian alchemy course will recognize this, but I think it's a really good demonstration for us to kind of unpack this beholdingness to linear time. So this is it's about, what is that, 9 o'clock on the clock face? You've got sunrise on Sunday, and the symbol for the sun is right there in the alchemical calendar. Alchemists understood that there were 7 planets. Those are the planets that you could see with the naked eye. So Pluto isn't involved in the alchemical calendar, but you can see that the sun rules Sunday. If you go in along that straight line, the moon rules Monday. There's the symbol for the moon right here. And then if we keep going, we've got, you know, Mars rules Tuesday, Mercury rules Wednesday, Jupiter rules Thursday, and so on. And then, so that's the days, but then the day itself is that whole circle around the clock face. So the day is divided into hours in a day, but they saw it as the hours of light and the hours of darkness. So it wasn't just that every hour was 60 minutes. It depended on whether or not we were at the equinoxes. This drawing right here is perfect for an equinox, where everything is equal, and the packets of time are very equidistant in linear time. But when we're at a holiday like today, like the winter solstice for those of us in North America, it might look a little bit different because we've got so much more dark than we do light. So it might mean that the light packets are shorter and the dark packets are longer. So midnight may or may not actually be, depending on your latitude, 12 p.m. But I just wanted to share that with us to kind of give us a sense of picking ourselves up and out of the Gregorian calendar and up and out of linear time, so that we don't have to lose that sense, but I think to invite us to integrate into something a little bit more in sync with the earth, in sync with the cycles of the sun and the moon. And so I mentioned that equinoxes could be considered sunrise and sunset, and solstices could be considered high noon and midnight, just loosely as a gestalt. But if you think about the energetic of where we're at today, then we're at midnight for those of us in the northern hemisphere. And how does that feel? That feels very much like an inward turning. And so it's interesting to note about the presence of the temples. We're going to visit 7 temples I think today in this, before we get into a meditation. But there's something, we've talked about how temples were sited on specific spaces on the surface of Earth's crust for a reason. And they were that reason has to do with something that in science is called magnetic coupling. But these temples were, they were, a lot of people talk about them. They're sacred places. They're places of healing. They're places for altered and heightened states of consciousness, but they're also inextricably connected to the ley lines and the energetics of the earth. And not just the energetics of the earth. A lot of these temples are aligned to the solstices and the equinoxes. And there's something that happens during the solstices and the equinoxes that I found these scientific papers and I couldn't quite integrate them, but they'll study the temperature and the number of electrons around the Earth's sphere. And at the poles during these times, there's almost like a wobble. They call it magnetic coupling, but it's something that allows more solar energy to come through. That these temples were sited on places where there was a strong correlation to something that scientists call a geophysical anomaly. And an anomaly just means that it's geophysical anomalies. So there's geomagnetic energy, there's electromagnetic energy, there's gravitational fields, and something around those temples, something goes a little bit less than normal, higher or lower than normal. So the temples were taking advantage of these anomalies, and they were using that as already something to charge up. And then when you were in these spaces, Stonehenge, for example, on these specific days, you received that energy. So that's also why it was such a sacred time and a sacred space. So, and so we temples use sacred geometry. We know this, and they were using these earth, sky alignments. So I wanted to give us that kind of little bit of a backdrop to understand how sacred these times are. But also, there was a temple that was discovered recently in, oh, it wasn't Turkey, but they measured some kind of a healing energy that was coming off the temple, and then they realized that people weren't equipped to stay in the temples for very long. So the other thing that it's worthwhile, that this is a place where we come and we visit and we receive downloads, and then we spend the time in our own spaces, in our own homes, integrating those energetic downloads. So let's go ahead and get to a couple spaces that we all know, but just for us to think about and get inside the pure positive excitement energy. So we're going to start at Stonehenge, which is one of my favorites. So this is actually sunrise after the darkest night of the year. A lot of the temples you'll see when we go through these things, it's sunrise tomorrow morning. People spend the night in these spaces, and then it's the sunrise where the light's coming in. So this is sunrise tomorrow at Stonehenge. And Stonehenge has been found to mark the arrival of both the winter and the summer solstices. But this on winter solstice, the stones go, and thousands of people come here. They go through the central altar and they go to what's called the slaughter stone. So here's a little demographic. So here's the central altar right here. And then here's the slaughter stone. But on both winter and summer solstices, this is where the sun is rising and it's setting at Stonehenge. And so it's not just the light of the sun, but it's the light and magnetism, light and energy. And if we think about the fact that more of the solar energy can come in at the solstices and the equinoxes, and I'll see if I can find a couple links to papers, like that's not even pseudoscience, that's like astronomical science. And I just didn't have time to prepare to integrate all those words into here, but I'll send some links when we go through the recording of this. So let's go next to Newgrange, Ireland. And I love this. You can see the Triskele on the wall here. Newgrange, it's in North Ireland. It's probably about 3200 BC when they think they've dated it. So it's got grass on the roof, as you can see from the picture down in the bottom right. And inside, there's a series of tunnels or channels. And this is during sunrise on the winter solstice. So just like Stonehenge, it's tomorrow morning sunrise. And the sun pours into this main chamber. And, loosely interpreted by modern archaeologists that this was a space to celebrate this day, or at least to receive in the activation of the energies. So this is, and also above the passage, there's something called a roof box up here somewhere, and the light also enters into there and creates I didn't have enough time to get all the pictures together, but there's another, this kind of, the more over a certain time, the light increases and then it decreases. So let's go somewhere else, which I find Machu Picchu. So Machu Picchu is sacred for many different reasons beyond solstice, and they've obviously had a very keen sense of astrology and astronomy. But this is actually June 21st here, because we're in the southern hemisphere. So this is their winter solstice, but it's interesting to think about the energetics for all wherever we're at. So this is the feast in Inca times was known as Inti Raimi. Inti is the Inca deity of the sun. So there's Machu Picchu on the left, and down in the bottom right, you can see that there's light coming in at two different times. And one of them is the 21st of June at dawn. The very first light comes in and it shines down in the center of that altar. The second window, which is sort of 90 degrees rotated, that's the sun's rays at summer solstice. So this is their temple of the sun. It was known to honor Inti, their deity for the sun. And there's even some stuff that suggests that along the back wall here, there was a lot of different gemstones that were encrusted in this temple. So this was the time where they did sacred ceremony, and they worked with the light and the magnetism that was coming through in this sacred temple. And then we're going to go to Tulum. This is a place that I'm relatively familiar with. This is in the Yucatan of Mexico. And it's said that this population collapsed around the 15th century when the Spanish arrived. But there's stone buildings on this beautiful coast. And in the top left, you can see on winter solstice, the sun comes through this hole, and it almost looks like a burst of sunlight coming through the hole. And I'm not sure, I've seen this picture in the top left. I was looking for how you could see it on a map. I think that's the right temple. That's not a picture I took myself in the bottom right, but I remember that the temple was looking right out over the ocean, and it was sunrise on the solstice. And then this is a relatively more recent discovery. This is the Karahan Tepe in Turkey, and this is in the Tek Mountains. And this is a sister, the more famous site is the Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. But this space, archaeologists are beginning to say that this Karahan Tepe is possibly a site involved with healing and regeneration. And during the winter solstice, you can see the line in the left-hand picture. The line, the sun goes through this temple and into a back little sacred circular area, and it shines its light on, they have these faces in this temple at the right, and you can see that the light from the sun is shining on this fully illuminated this head. And so they're still discovering what that means, but if we think about all the things that are happening in this space being associated with healing and regeneration, of course they're harnessing the anomalies that come through during the equinoxes and the solstices. And then we're going to close right now with where I think we're going to spend a little bit of time, one of my favorite spaces, which is the Karnak Temple in Egypt. And this is a place that's typically pretty crowded. You can see there's lots of people here, but this is their shrine dedicated to Ra, their sun god. And during winter solstice, people flock to this temple to witness the sun's rising. It rises up through the little door in the temple and beams down the corridor. And I wanted to share a couple more photos here. This is this was during I guess there was less tourism at some point, but you can see this is the macro view. So we're looking down the hypostyle hall here, and then we're going to go get a little closer. You can see beyond the sphinxes, there's these columns, and further out in the distance is that the thing that's up here, which is this doorway where people are flocking. So with that, I wanted us to invite us to spend some time here as a little pause before we get to more things about what's happening today and herbs and winter and support. But I wanted us to invite the light in to our lives right now and imagine that we are here. So go ahead. Most of you guys have your cameras off anyway. We're going to spend probably about 5 or 10 minutes in a meditation. And so the idea would be that I'm going to invite you to go with me to this location. Obviously, you're probably going to do it in the astral unless you're lucky enough to be in Luxor right now in Egypt. But you can imagine what you would be doing would be probably arriving before midnight tonight and spending the darkest night there and then greeting the light. So let's go ahead and take a couple moments, take a couple breaths to just come into our bodies, come into this gathering. And first, just acknowledge your physical vessel, how you're feeling today, where your mind's at, how your emotions are, and then just see if you can exhale any distractions so that you can bring more of yourself to this circle, to this time, this sacred solstice time. And as you're coming into your physical vessel here and now, whenever you're listening to this, and coming into this circle of people gathered around the world, start to feel the sacredness of this time. Maybe you can even feel like the remembering that you know on a very deep level what all of this is about. And so I'm going to invite you to stay wherever you're at, whatever chair you're seated on. If you're lying down, that's great. But I'm going to invite you to stay in this vessel, but also to imagine that you're going to be able to lift yourself up and out of your physical body while staying there and travel with me to Egypt. Call this imaginative visualization if you like. It's also astral travel, however you're comfortable with it. But imagine you're going to this temple. And imagine that you're there and you're going to spend the night there. Maybe you bring some kind of warm jacket or something to sleep comfortably, and you can imagine spending that night, the darkest night of the year. How many stars are in the sky? So we're going to speed this up a little bit because obviously we're not going to spend the whole meditation at night, but feel maybe even as you're here, the chill of the stone beneath your feet, or if you choose to sit or lie down, and you can look around and it's dark, but the stars are so bright. And right now for us, we are headed towards the illumination of the moon, so we can start to be able to see the structures of the temple, but also connect up to the vastness of the sky. And see if you can just get comfortable with the darkness. In linear world, we're taught to almost just drive against this stillness. And in sacred times, they understood the necessary part of each aspect of the cycle. We're in the cycle of turning inward. We're in the cycle of the darkest times of the Northern Hemisphere of the year. See if you can find peace with just being with that energy. See if you can let it surround you and just infuse you with this sense of presence. Winter solstice is often for me a sense of returning to inner presence, inner knowing. And maybe you can notice how you're breathing now. So there you are outside beneath the stars. See if you can draw in a little bit deeper inhale and take in the energetic of this place. So there's the way it's built, there's the materials that were used, there's the place that it's sited on that already has so much sacred geometry and so much power in the tools that were used and the site that's used. And see if you can just receive, as you breathe in, the energetics of this space. Maybe you can already feel it help you sort of float and hum a little bit here. And as you exhale, let your exhale be a little bit longer than your inhale, but also let your exhale be the opportunity, as always, to release anything that does not serve your ability to be perfectly situated right now. And as you're breathing, sinking in a little bit more comfortably into this silence, into this stillness, as well as into this sacred space. And see if you can receive the peace and the support of the stillness. And maybe we're sort of after midnight right now. You can tell that the dawn is coming. The sky is starting to lighten up just a little bit. And notice how just taking that into your senses, in your visual senses, maybe you can feel a little bit of a temperature shift. Maybe you can just, as you're looking, you can feel what it feels like to know beyond a question of a doubt that the light is on its way. But see if you can also sense the wisdom here of the not rushing into the light, just knowing that there is a cycle that we are experiencing and being at one with this cycle and letting that knowing somewhere out there, spring equinox, the light's going to be dazzling us at dawn. For right now, we're just understanding this knowing. The light is on its way. And see if just how if a human's in a fearful mode, if they can find something that helps them grasp on and feel comfortable, you kind of, again, take another deep breath. With everything, maybe even about your life, our world, this time, let this winter solstice remind us of the sacredness of the cycles, of the largest cycles of time, and see if we can just settle in a little bit. So the light's coming now. And maybe where you're at, there's tons of people, but maybe it's just you and the handful of people that are here with us, and you can really experience this in circle, but on your own. So now you are knowing without a doubt that the sun's going to rise soon. Feel that energetic. The psychology, the emotion of it, but then also with this understanding that because of the way that the solstices and equinoxes work with our poles, there's more of the sun's energy coming in right now. So when you're going to greet the sun, it's just about to rise. It's almost like there's going to be this flush of cosmic download. And there you are in this hypostyle hall with all of this sacred architecture to support you in receiving this light. And imagine that now if you were seated, if you were lying, you're going to be able to sit up tall or maybe stand up. Let your spine be straight as you're looking to greet the sun. And feel yourself rooted into the energetic of the earth. Root yourself down. And then bring yourself up into your heart and let your heart open to receive this light that is now inevitable. And let your crown open to receive whatever energetics are still pouring in from the celestial beings above. Just because we can't see them when the light's out doesn't mean they're not there. So here you are, this perfect toroidal shape, and just let yourself now stand in this temple and receive the sunrise. And notice if there's any energy, any emotion, any thought, any flash, or maybe you can just simply be with the cycle, be with the process. And understand the sacredness of this alignment. This civilization invested so much time and energy to create this alignment so that they could receive it. So now you get to receive it too. Maybe as you breathe in, take it into your heart, but take it into all the cells in your physical body, take it into all the aspects of your field. All of that light, a very potent dose of light and magnetism and energy and upgrade. And as you breathe out, again, anything that is not of this upgraded light, it just sort of dissipates out of your field. So just spend about 13 breaths here, communing with this sunrise in Karnak in Egypt. And imagine with every inhale, you're just lifting yourself up a little bit more. As I mentioned, it's this humming energy. And exhale automatically is just like our breath. It's just the stale energy that doesn't serve. And there's nothing to do, there's just to be one with this cycle. And notice if there's anything that's just sort of mentally, emotionally releasing or realigning for you. There's just this sense that all is well, that we are in this inward cycle right now. And then we get to trust the process of the cycle. And so now the sun has risen. It's warming your face, it's warming your body. Maybe even send a pulse of gratitude from your heart. Send it out in all directions, but send it also directly to the sun. And if you feel called, the sun god Ra, that this temple was built for. And feel the oneness, feel the fact that you're seen, you're known, you're a part of everything here. You're always here, you're always welcome. And we're going to sort of explore this aspect of ourselves. You know, we're not just in this physical body, we're many dimensions and many times. So I would actually like to invite you, if you feel called, to stay in that space. Keep a footprint in this temple if you would like throughout the next 24 hours. But slowly start to bring yourself back to the space where you're listening to this live on Zoom or watching it on video, so that you can come back to where you're seated, where you're lying, back into the physical body that you know as yours in this lifetime. Maybe wiggle your fingers and wiggle your toes. And notice if there's anything that's shifted for you. And maybe be open to the next cycle of 24 hours, because it's midnight tonight into sunrise tomorrow that we're preparing for. And I found this quote and I love it. I wanted to share it with you guys. Let your heart emerge as the wild things do with the return of the light. So that's this understanding that the wild things, the plants and animals, they know these cycles. They're good with this time. And see if you can find peace in your heart, find understanding and connection and trust and the thrill of the cycle, so that you can feel really grounded and really safe and really able to keep your heart open during these times of, on one level, immense craziness. On another level, never been more perfect timing in this lifetime than right now. So let your heart emerge with the light. And also keep your connection to source and spirit open to all those stars, all those astral intelligences that are up there. All right, well, I'm going to stop my share for a moment before I switch gears into some really fun herbal energetic information for us. But I wanted to, before I switch gears, just see if anybody has anything they want to share. I know we just came out of a pretty big meditation. So if you just want to keep your eyes closed and keep your camera off, that's what I was planning, but I just got the nudge to see if anybody wanted to share. Just unmute yourself and go for it if you want to.
I was imagining like the family of humans around me and their body heat in the temple. It was really nice.
Hmm. Yeah, and I bet almost because of the coolness of the night, you could pick up on it more. That's really beautiful.
Right, right.
Thank you, Heidi, for sharing. Anybody else? Okay. Well, we're going to keep on going. We're going to shift gears a little bit here. Wanted to give you guys a little a snapshot into part of what I do. I don't know that you all know all of this, but we're going to look at what the Lunar Herbal Alchemy. So there's an herbalist. I forget her name right now. I should have put it down. The book's now like $400 or something like this, but she went through the cycles of the year, and she talked about, and a lot of herbalists do this, but the idea is that the plants, just like the animals, just as we were talking about, like the wild things understand this. So what are the plants that have an energetic affinity for particular times of the year? And I love when there's a convergence between different sources and different texts that are old. So it's one of the things that the Herbal Alchemy Guild does, is just bring in this plant medicine. So December's herb is pine. And the herb that people get during that time is pine. And so you can make yourself a pine tea. We talk about the benefits of pine. But I wanted to really quickly say that one of the things you can do is make a simple syrup with pine. I'm going to gloss over really. Pine's antimicrobial, it's antibacterial, it's really good for cold and flu season. It's also really good for clearing the respiratory passages, which is this time of year. Pine simple syrup is great because it's something that can be stored. Simple syrup is typically made with sugar. If you're not into regular sugar, you can use whatever kind of sweetener you want. You can use agave, you can use stevia, but the idea is that you're going to want to steep it. And steep it means almost like make it like you're going to make a tincture. You're going to keep it in a jar and shake it, or you're going to be able to decoct it and boil it in like a warm sugar water. So you're either going to want to heat the thing with pine, or you're going to want to keep it where it can be at room temperature, the constituents can come out. And then you're going to have this thing called a pine simple syrup. Simple syrups are known to be sweeteners. So you can use simple syrups in herbal teas, in coffee drinks, in mixed drinks, in baking. You can even use it in soaps and scrubs. And pine simple syrup departs, as you can imagine, this wonderful winter smell, but also it's got all of these medicinal qualities. I have it in my I have a chocolate mushroom coffee that I like to drink in the winter, and pine simple syrup is really wonderful. So that just lets you know like what was on the stack for this last month of the Lunar Herbal Alchemy Cycle. But I wanted to shift next into herbs for winter wellness. And I wanted to start with a quote by Michael Grieger. Ounce for ounce, herbs and spices have more antioxidants than any other food group. No kidding. When we think about, why do the people in China who live in the mountains live to be over 100 years? The one thing that many studies say is they drink herbal tea all the time, because herbs and plants, maybe we can't survive on them only, but it's really that's where our immune system comes from. That's where our microbiome comes from. That's where all the good stuff comes from. So I love that quote. So I wanted to present with a couple things. The idea with this offering was you don't have to go buy anything right now. This is all stuff that I bet you probably have in your kitchen right now. Ginger roots. The roots fresh are considered nourishing. The dried are considered purifying. So you can use either of those. Ginger is also, it's antimicrobial. It's really good for cold and flu season. Whenever I feel something coming on, if I can, I'll slice fresh ginger and boil it for a while. Otherwise, ginger tea. And it's indicated for colds, flu, cough, as you probably know, nausea, indigestion, arthritis, PMS. It's also really good for stoking digestive fire. So we're going to see this in a digestive recipe here in a second. But ginger is probably something you already have, and you could consider throwing into a tea or putting a little bit more of it into a spiced bread recipe. All those things are ways that we can incorporate these things into our food, because in theory, our food should be our medicine. This is one of my favorite teas, and it's just a very simple something that people already have. Whenever they're saying they're coming down with something, I say, if you have oregano, rosemary, sage, or thyme in your spice cabinet, make a really potent dose of tea. That means just like throw a bunch of that stuff in and pour hot water over it. And these all have powerful antiviral, anti-inflammatory, and antioxidant properties. And if you can get that to be a warm tea that you're drinking down, especially if it's something in your respiratory system, all that antiviral, antimicrobial, anti-inflammatory stuff is going to start to work immediately. And I love this because, again, this isn't something we have to go out and buy. This is likely something that all of us, many of us in our kitchens, already have this stuff. Garlic, something else you probably already have. We're growing this season probably 30 different varieties of garlic up here. I'm going to be excited to share that with you. We're becoming a garlic farm of sorts. So this is our music garlic, but it's, you know, widely known to have antibacterial and antiviral properties. People use it in the herbal community to fight colds and flu. It also has been shown to help you recover faster if you have an illness. To maximize what you get from garlic, that a lot of the studies say you're going to want to chew it. You're going to want to have it be, if you just have powder garlic, that's fine. But if you can get it, even if it's minced garlic, get it to the space where you're going to want to chomp on it with your teeth, because the moment it gets chomped is when it's releasing a lot of its constituents that are considered to be antiviral and antibacterial. So put it in your soups, eat it however you want to eat it. But again, these are wonderful things. These are things that we already have. So let's get to, I wanted to offer us a couple different, and these, I call them gift recipes, but I think they're just things that when I give gifts to those that I love, I try to have these things on stack that are just really useful. Chamomile digestive. A digestive is something that you would, like it's often a bitters. I made this recipe as a bitters, which means it includes alcohol, but I'll share with you how to make it without alcohol if you want it without alcohol. So a digestive is something you would take after a meal, after a heavy meal, or if you've got an upset tummy, and it's going to help the digestive process. It's going to also help stoke the digestive fire. So we have chamomile that comes in a tea form. Ideally, you would have the loose flowers. Cinnamon. Cinnamon, so chamomile is a digestive, it's anti-inflammatory. Cinnamon is also a digestive, it's a circulatory. Citrus peel, antioxidant, anti-inflammatory. Any kind of citrus peel will work. I love orange personally. You could use dried or you could use fresh. Make sure that the citrus is organic, because if it's not, there's going to be a lot of gunk in that peel. So organic citrus for sure. Ginger, we just went through, digestive, antimicrobial. So if you're going to make it in terms of a straight up bitters, you're going to use a 40 proof alcohol of your choice, whatever that is for a hard alcohol. And you can also use maple syrup or honey to taste. If you don't want to use the alcohol, you can use apple cider vinegar. I prefer to say that use the one that's raw, use the Bragg's, use the apple cider vinegar that has the mother in it, because that's also going to support the microbiome. So the other thing is that the asterisk, cinnamon, citrus peel are also blood sugar balancing, which is great for a big meal. So they're known to be kind of, if you have diabetes or some kind of blood sugar anomaly, those two things will help the body regulate itself. So you're going to take a big mason jar, you're going to fill it with all that stuff. You're going to cover it 3/4 to fully with alcohol, or you could use vinegar if you desire. And then you're going to add, you know, I kind of use a rule of 1/3 sweetener, because I like things pretty sweet. I find it, if it's too alcoholic or too vinegary, I won't use it. So then you're going to make sure everything's covered before you close that jar. Then you're going to store it in a dark place. You can shake the jar a couple times a week. That's the standard process for a lot of different tincture making and just non-heat induced herbal decoctions. So 3 to 6 weeks is something. So put it in a cupboard and just shake it every once in a while. Then you're just going to strain it, and you can strain it back into that jar, store it in a cool, dry, dark place, and it stores for up to 6 months. Generally, you would take it as you needed it, 1 to 3 teaspoons after a meal. And this stuff works so well. And you can imagine if you gave somebody this, sometimes if I haven't finished making it, people love even receiving the jar with all the stuff in it. And I just say, in a couple more weeks, strain that out and use it. And it's kind of a very magical healing gift to give to people. So that's one suggestion. And then I want to get to this quote, Rosemary Gladstar. She's one of the grandmothers, modern grandmothers of herbalism. She actually I think she was one of the ones that coined the phrase fire cider. She says, the plants have enough spirit to transform our limited vision. And if we think about the wisdom of the natural world and how the wild things already know how interconnected they are to all the cycles of all the things, turning to the plants for support is probably a pretty wise thing for us to do at this juncture. So fire cider. Fire cider is something that's just used, again, it's popularly used in cold and flu season. Typically, you'll want to start making it in fall to have it when you're ready for winter, but it only takes a few weeks to make it. So you're going to use, I say, unpasteurized apple cider vinegar with the mother. You're going to want all those good little jujus in there, because it's going to help your tummy stay healthy. And then I made a big list of all these things, and I make them as I make them. But let's just look at the things that you could add. And if you even had 4 of these and you didn't want to go out and get the rest, you're still going to be doing really well. So you're going to be filling a jar, and you're going to be doing things like chopped onion. If you can, fresh turmeric. If you can't, use the powdered. If you can, fresh ginger. If you can't, use the powder. Horseradish, I love it. If you don't like it, drop it. Garlic, we already talked about the benefits of garlic. So if you can, fresh chop it. If you can't, use powder. Same thing with thyme. Rose hips have a really nice circulatory and warming effect. If you don't have them, I put that in parentheses, don't worry about it. And then we've got the citrus again, the whole lemon and a whole lime. So you're going to chop that up, make sure that's organic for the same reason as before, keep the peel in there. And then you also have a whole orange. I like to use jalapeno pepper. Some people will call for a habanero pepper. That's where it gets a little fiery. The onion and the garlic and the horseradish are already fiery, so make this to your taste. But all of this, you can tell, is going to really add heat to a system. Vinegar is already known to be antiviral, and the rawness of the apple cider vinegar is going to give you the probiotics that you need and all the other things that are firing you up. If you think about why you get a fever, the fever is surrounding and dampening down whatever it's making sure that the system is going to be okay. So this fire cider is almost like it's not going to make you have a fever, but it's going to actually help the body's natural healing processes. So you're going to layer this into a mason jar. I say to use a half gallon, the ones that are about this big, but you can do it however you want to do. If you're doing little gifts, just make them. And the nice thing is you can like the color of the peppers, the color of the citrus, you can make it a very pretty layering. And so you're just going to cover that with apple cider vinegar. Just like the last digestive, you're going to put it up in a cupboard in the kitchen. You can shake it a couple times a week. This time, I would say 4 weeks is sufficient. And I would say first strain it and then sweeten it, because this is a very potent, like you're going to taste the fieriness of this, and you're going to be able to make it so that it's palatable for you. For this, I tend to use a little bit more honey than I would have on the chamomile digestive, just because there's so much pop in there. And then I will add like some sparkling water to that and drink it as an apple cider vinegar tonic in the morning. I will probably do that during winter, at least every other day, if not every day. And I don't do it because I feel like I'm sick. I do it because I want to make sure that my body's in a good space. So the amount that you would use would be 2 to 4 tablespoons as needed or as palatable. So you could even just give the gifts of little cider and tell people to sweeten it as they want. So I just take a couple tablespoons, I add my honey, and then I add some bubbly water, and that's my morning digestive drink. So just ideas to share with you guys. This gives you a sense of what the Lunar Herbal Alchemy Guild is, and it's both herbs, but it's also the alchemy and the temples are still there. So for 2024, I'll probably be teaching some classes later on further down the line, but I'm not sure. I'm going to be doing a lot of grant writing for the nonprofit, so I wanted to offer a lunar engagement with folks and to give you a sense of the different facets. So everything that we went through today is going to be in there, but also this is going to be a free offering. You're all probably on my email list. So I'm going to be emailing once I get the recording up. I'm going to be emailing this. I'm going to be emailing everybody a little like PDF download of all this stuff. So if you liked this and you wanted to check out Fire Cider or check out the chamomile digestive, you're going to be able to when I do the next podcast, I'll send all that your way. So yeah, thank you guys for being here. Does anybody have anything they want to ask or share or anything? Happy solstice, and may you be blessed at the depths of winter tonight. Thank you, Heidi. Thank you, Dorothy. Good to see you guys. Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Eve. All right, well, be blessed. I'm grateful for all of you. I'll talk with you soon. Rasa says thank you. Happy solstice. You're welcome. All right. Be well. I'll see you guys soon.